We have an awesome show for you guys today.
The greatest eventer of all time.
Good news for the sport.
Welcome to the Jon and Rick Show, brought to you by Horse Trailer Pros. Jon, we are here today. A little sad news has happened. We're going to be talking about Jimmy Wofford and his passing and his great achievements in what he gave to our sport, not only eventing, but I think across the board with equestrians. So everybody out there thinking about Jimmy, we're going to talk about him. Give me your thoughts there, Jon.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a surprise. He'd been dealing with some health issues, so everybody knew it was coming, and yet it still hit pretty hard. I think for all of us, it was shocking. He was always there, right? Every major event you went to, you could see Jimmy with his dog or dogs, depending on what he had at the time, his black labs. He always had something intelligent to add to any conversation you were in. He was incredibly funny, but like in a very dry, witty way. I rode with him personally for several years. I learned so much from him, and not just how to ride, but how to carry yourself, how to be a professional, how to be a leader of the sport. And he always did it in such a good, quiet way. He was just, to me, he was the epitome of what a horseman was, and he was classy. He was a gentleman, and I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him tremendously. Just being around him was amazing.
Well, I agree with you. I think we already missed out. I know a friend of ours took over for him on the Chronicle of the Horse, doing the write-ups for Land Rover Kentucky as they came up. But Jimmy, I rode for Jimmy as well. And way back in 1990, 91, he helped me, coached me at Fair Hill. I went to his farm, took lessons. He told us how to get to the top of a mountain at Paris and Middleburg. It was a Paris mountain up there. You had to get to the top. He said, when you get to the top and your horse makes it, you're ready for a 3-day. Right. He was quite the horseman, always telling us how to take care of our horses the right way. And when you knew you were ready to do something, I think he was brilliant at that. Just many stories about him. I think one of ours that we share was 2007. I think it was. We were at the USEA Hall of Fame meeting in Colorado Springs.
Yep.
And we had 2 West Point graduates that were there in uniform that came. We invited them to dinner, and Jimmy happened to be emceeing, as he always did, and saw them. Bo Hilliard is one of those guys that we are still in contact with, Jon. And Jimmy made his way over, made sure he got a conversation with these 2 guys, because Jimmy was officer from the Army. And it was just really cool watching that interaction. And it's just, that's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. He was amazing that night. And interestingly, without, giving people's personal lives away, I think it not only was cool for us that Jimmy did that, but it meant a lot to those 2 guys, and kind of turned things around for them and made them feel a lot better about
what they were doing,
what this country was appreciating.
Yeah, definitely. I think, after that, the Bo, the friend of ours, 3 weeks later was deployed to Afghanistan to defuse bombs,
right.
And I think he saw the USEA and the eventing community and how we all were, and they appreciated that. And Jimmy made that really apparent for them. And that was one way that he touched a lot of people, even outside the scope of eventing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he was pretty great. He actually, funny enough, I don't know if you know this, he was my young rider coach as well.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, we went to Young Riders. My area 4 didn't have a team, and then area 2 didn't have a team. So we combined with them, and maybe area 1. So it was myself, Buck Davidson, Buck's sister Nancy Davidson, and then Ursula Brush were the team. Right. And I'd never met Jimmy, and to be honest, I was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I just barely spent part of a year in Canada. I didn't really know. I knew who Jimmy was because I applied to be a working student at his place. And for various reasons, it just didn't work out that I went to Jimmy. I went to Peter Gray. But I'd never really met Jimmy other than speaking to him on the phone one time.
Right.
And I remember we walked the course and he told me to make sure that at this corner that I knew the long option. And of course, being, I think 19 at the time, I said, yes, sir. And then in my head was like, whatever, old man, like I'm going straight. My horse is awesome. I'm not going to go long. And I came in off of, this is an old sentence right here. I came in off of phase C into the 10-minute box. For you kids, that's the way it used to be. And we're cooling my horse out. I was sitting on a chair as my team was cooling out my horse. And Jimmy came up to me and said, the first rider out, I was second rider. They said, the first rider out had to stop at that corner. You're going long. And I went, I don't really remember how to do that. And he looked at me and he didn't get upset. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a pamphlet of papers like that. And it had maps, drawings of all of the combinations, all of the fences. I don't know where he got them. It didn't look like he drew them himself, but I don't know where they're from. And he showed me a diagram of the long option. And I went out and it wasn't ever in doubt that that's what I was going to do. He just commanded the attention. And
right.
there was no debate in my head of like, well, I'm going to go.
No, you were doing what he told you to do.
It was Jimmy Wofford. That's what you did.
Yeah, exactly. He was a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, a story for us that includes you was a clinic at Susan Wainwright's in Montgomery, Alabama. Probably, what year did you go to Boca?
I think I went in 06 and no, that's a lie.
Was when you were.
No, it wasn't that. It was 2012 and then 2014. So 2012 was the year I was on the Nations Cup.
So it was 2012, Montgomery, Alabama, Jimmy Wofford. It was Briggs's first ride under Jimmy. And we watched you go at Boca. And he was very proud of you watching your horse go around. It was really sloppy going and you got it done.
Yeah.
But my story about Jimmy at this clinic was he was famous for having hankies like blue or red, and you'd be taking a clinic and he would say, let's say put a red, you didn't know he had different colors. He put a red hanky up on the jump and he goes, now you look at that hanky. And I guess Briggs would go around, he'd jump it and he would switch it after he was done and he would switch it before he got there and put a blue hanky. And then you would go and he goes, okay, what color was the hanky? And you would go, well, it was blue. He goes, no, it wasn't. I switched it to red before you ever went.
Right.
So he was just teaching you that your focus point, it was a cool thing that he used to do. I loved this hanky thing.
Yeah. He did that with me, but he must've known my motivation because it was with money.
You put a $5 bill or $100 bill up there.
Yeah. So he'd be like, if you can tell me how much change is on there and what it is, you can have it. And you'd jump, he'd be like, it was 2 quarters and a nickel and a dime. He'd be like, boom, here you go. This is your money.
There you go. Yeah, he was cool that way. I mean, all the way down. I think I remember seeing him at Maryland, 2022, probably the last time I saw him. Just an amazing man with his dogs. He loved to hunt and he loved his labs. I just want to call out, Jimmy, we will always have you on our side and look out for us when we're galloping out there cross country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. All right. Well, so Rick, with that said, we probably should take a break.
Let's do it. We're going to have Bruce Haskell come on.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. Anyway.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. So let's just take a break and we'll be back with Bruce Haskell.
All right.
Want to advertise on the Jon and Rick Show? Contact Jon at 352-875-8622
or call Rick at 850-879-2649.
For a horse owner on the road, your trailer is essential. No one enjoys being stuck on the road. At Horse Trailer Pros, we repair, renovate, and maintain all makes and models of horse trailers. We work directly with your insurance company or manufacturer for warranty repairs and insurance claims. Our state-of-the-art facility provides quick turnaround and friendly customer service. Considering a living quarter conversion? We do those too. Find comfort on the road with Horse Trailer Pros. Call or text 352-804-2131. HorseTrailerPros.com.
Hey, it's John here. I just want to let you guys know I got back from schooling at Magnolia Sands Farm here in Ocala, Florida. Their cross-country field is perfectly suited for a first outing on a young horse or schooling your upper-level horse. Magnolia Sands offers over 110 jumps ranging from starter to intermediate, plus multiple banks, ditches, and waters. They're constantly updating their courses and have even added new ditches and a starter ditch wall. Conveniently located in Northeast Ocala, Magnolia Sands has made it easy for riders and trainers with online waivers, Venmo, and PayPal, and even offer a golf cart for guests. MagnoliaSandsFarm.com. Dusty Rose Farm, a beautiful and newly renovated 25-acre farm, is offering long-term or seasonal rent, dry stalls, and layout. Located in Anthony, Florida, it's just 30 minutes to both Weck and Hits, 15 minutes to Majestic Oaks, 35 minutes to the Florida Horse Park. 38 stalls available for rent in 2 barns that have all the amenities. Large stalls with new mats and automatic waters. Plenty of turnout, a half-mile irrigated track, 300 by 300 natural sand arena with a full jump course and dressage court. Loads of parking with 2 full RV hookups. Call or text for rates to book your stay in sunny and warm Ocala, Florida, 636-751-1200. I'm John Holling. We run Holling Eventing out of Willow Run Farm in Ocala, Florida. We run a full-service training facility here at Holling Eventing. We have amateur clients, we have sale horses, we teach lessons, and obviously our own competition horses as well. When Kurt first arrived at the farm, he was a little bit nervous and excited. Stress Less really helped so we could get him in a training routine. Stress Less is really easy to use. It's a part of our program. He gets it as a daily supplement and it helps us keep him focused and ready to go to work. This year we're moving Kurt up to the preliminary level. He's been doing great and I'm very excited about the season to come. I'm John Holling and I'd recommend Stress Less to anyone who wants to help their horses stay calm and focused.
Welcome back to the Jon and Rick Show, brought to you by Horse Trailer Pros, and we are now joined by Mr. Bruce Haskell, the president of ERA. Yeah, Bruce?
How you doing, guys? Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So obviously you and I last saw each other at the risk management meeting in Paris.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. I think we yelled at each other across the room a couple of times. But before we get into that, I thought it'd be good to get a little intro so that everybody kind of understands and knows who you are. Obviously, all of the event riders know, but we are like on the Jon and Rick Show, Bruce. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are like worldwide, super international sensations, Rick and I.
No, I've seen that. It's a good, yeah. It's a good show.
Yeah.
So what I thought would be kind of cool is if you could just sort of start us from the beginning. How did you, well, you grew up in New Zealand, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. So long story short is, I'm just pulling my hair because we've all got, the three of us have all got off horses. So we've all got hat hair. I'm just not going for the cap.
Exactly.
So I apologize to your audience for my sort of gruff look. I came over from New Zealand with an ambition to get on long lists, and this is going back a few decades, unfortunately. And then through the progression, I developed a yard, developed horses, went around Burleigh, went around Badminton, and I got to a point where there were a couple of things that were starting to turn up in the political side that I wasn't happy with. And Francis Withington was at the point of that stage of saying, well, you know, the only way to affect change is to be involved. And it was a big, scary position where we had to meet with the FEI. And it's like, well, I've always heard the them and us story on the FEI, and you will talk amongst yourselves and the same thing, the FEI this and the FEI that. Well, actually, they're a group that's trying to help and progress the sport, and they have to have checks and balances. And while I'm not a supporter of everything they do, they hold the key to moving things forward. So over a period of time of being involved with them, we've managed to get a relationship where the riders have the option of speaking up, but equally what the riders don't understand is they've got a double voice. They've got the rider representative on the FEI eventing committee. They've got us backing that position, and also they have an avenue through their national federations as to, so there's many ways they can affect change. And it's unfortunate that the history of this group has been slightly antagonistic, as in going against that, but we're in a position of good relationship. We can pick up the phone to our, you guys have got David, who's one of you, absolutely one of you, a rider, a designer, an official, and a person that you can talk to. We've got a better relationship with a group that used to be the opposition. They're not. Is that a long story short? Or is it just a long story?
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. And to that point, I thought it was very interesting at that meeting, right? Riders were invited. And there was, I think, counting me, because I'm a rider, right? I'm on the risk management steering committee, but I am a competitor, as you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We had, who else we had there? We had Sam there.
Sam, Echo Ratings. We had Clayton, writer and designer. We had Kai Stefan, so again, writer, designer, and who else was there?
I feel like there were 5, and again, it's a little bit of a gray area because obviously everybody who was there for the most part are riders, they're competitors. Yeah. But as far as people who are currently competing and actively out horse showing regularly, there weren't a lot of us, and there weren't really, the big guys there. And I think that's part of it for me, sort of coming in from the other side, is I try to always wear that competitor hat first, but it's difficult to be like, to sort of, I don't know if sympathy is the right word, but to feel like, oh, the poor riders aren't getting heard if they don't show up.
I think that's a really difficult point to get across is, and I think I said it to you when we had the meeting, Rick, is it's not a representative group. So we have to be careful on the political layers that we're observing within that. The construct is that, as it appears to be a discussion, it's not an elected position. It has, so if I tested that from a governance point of view, which is my background and interest, is it would fail on every test. Those people in that room cannot make informed decisions for the sport because they electively choose to be there on their economic wealth or their ability to be pushed there by federations. That group is not representative of our sport at all. And you saw it, John. There are 105 people and 10 people actively communicating. The rest of them were just seat warmers, and they might be incredibly well opinioned and justified seat warmers, but I'm really sorry, what does a dressage judge have to think about a 5-star design principle or a flag rule? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So we got to be careful, and I think I said it openly and publicly in that room, is that it's not a representative group that only considered a discussion. And my typical view on as how they work in the past is, so long as that is considered to be a discussion and not a decision point, I would not want to see any recommendations or rules move forward. And while I probably view my role as slightly skeptical, I could strip that to pieces from a governance point. Governance transparency, it fails. So long as that's just a healthy debate and a healthy conversation, no problem. If that's we've consulted, air quotes, sorry about that, a little bit 80s, then that's not a good place to start.
Hey, so John and Bruce, not being at the meeting, and obviously we're talking and people are listening. I think let's drive in a little bit, Bruce, with your concerns at that meeting. I know you brought up flag rule. We started talking about designs and modifications of courses. And I think you even mentioned Horse and the Hound earlier before our pre-interview coming on. So let's talk about the meeting, where it was going, what your concerns are, and so that people listening can kind of get on board with what we need to be looking at.
Yeah, no problem. I'll paraphrase this by saying that from a development point of view, it is healthy that the FEI is talking, even if they're talking about their wider plans. It's healthy that external pressure has been put on them either through us or by governance that they have to start discussing. I don't agree with the process. I think it could be wider and more inclusive. But at least the difference between 2023 and even pre-COVID was we're having those conversations now. Where it goes from here, I guess, is twofold. One, if the riders have any, or the athletes have any concerns, they need to channel them either through us or more correctly through the national federations. There is an implication on these discussions that were there, both in terms of the domestic rule, as in, is this rule applicable in Guatemala? Is it applicable in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, wherever? Whatever they want to change, is it applicable? And then also that you've got to be careful that a lot of FEI is top down. They're really only interested in the visual picture at the Olympics and at the World Games. They're really only interested in the World Games, looking at whether it matches the Olympics for external appeal. And then we end up having to deal with a byproduct down the layers. So again, if this is sounding cynical or backward, it's because I've seen this process enough, and I want to at some point be refreshed by a better version of it. So the main points for me, as we talked about, probably John, you can hopefully jump in and back me on this. I categorize them into effect of, or whether they're affecting current riders or whether they had a future effect. The main one for us is the 5-star qualifications. That was a prime discussion as to what 5-star looked like, and if it was scary and refreshing to hear that group talk about the Olympics not being the deciding factor. That was the first time I'd ever heard a collective group of people in eventing talking that we might not stay in the Olympics. Don't get scared. My attitude was, don't get scared by it. We don't want out. No one wants out. But it certainly gives us an opportunity to look what the future looks like. Then you went the next layer down, and the first topic that came up, which was mentioned in Horse and Hound, was what are we doing to get to 5-star? Because seriously, there is a concern that those athletes that are competing at 5-star and making us look good or look bad on a social presence is affected by the qualifications of how they got to that route. So there was a pretty healthy debate, and the conclusion that came for that, which I think is positive, is unfortunately it's not a new conclusion. It was there when we were all at Liverpool, is 4-star's got to mean 4-star. It just seems that there's now more buy-in because there's pretty much statistical evidence to prove that those that are at 5-star are at risk of falling. And I'm afraid to say now they're not super interested in whether we fall off. They're interested in whether, for the picture of the sport, for the future of the sport, for social license, whether there's a horse fall.
Absolutely. Bruce, let's do this. I don't want to lose that thought. We just need to take a break for a minute, and I want to come back, and I just want to pick this right back up because I have a couple of questions for you about the Olympics and about horse falls as well. So let's take a moment. Rick will be right back with Bruce Haskell.
I'm Gabby Ruane, and I run Ruane Eventing. I run my program out of Reddick, Florida. I start off in the morning bringing the horses in, feeding, and then tacking up and riding pretty much all day. It's always a busy day here with multiple horses in training. When Mufasa first arrived, he was quite sensitive and reactive as a young horse. I decided to start him on Stress Less. I've tried quite a few other supplements, and I felt like they all dulled him. Stress Less was the first supplement that really let me get through his tough moments, but I felt like he could still keep that spark that made him special. Stress Less helps keep Mufasa calm but responsive even through his tough moments. When Mufasa first arrived, he was quite reactive and sensitive, and I needed something to help me get him through those tough moments. Mufasa began his career as an event horse last year, and this year I hope to move him up to the preliminary level and then end the year with a 2-star long. I'm Gabby Ruane, and I would recommend Stress Less to anyone who wants their horse more focused and rideable overall.
Grant Showalter has over 15 years of equine bodywork and saddle fitting experience. His technique allows him to identify and alleviate tightness in muscles. He uses trigger point massage to release points of restriction. Grant has over a decade of experience fitting and adjusting a wide variety of saddles. His expertise in equine physiology, coupled with a thorough understanding of the importance of a properly fitted saddle, allows him to quickly identify and correct any balance issues. Grant can also adjust your saddle on site. Grant works on all of my competition horses, and I have noticed a significant improvement in their performance at competitions and their overall way of going. Grant's based in Ocala, Florida year-round, but regularly travels to the surrounding areas. For more information or to schedule an appointment, call 484-639-4454.
Hi, my name's Leslie Law, and we are a proud supporter of Jump for Joy. We've been using their portable cross-country jumps now for about 10 to 15 years. We love these jumps because, as you can see, they're very easy to move. It would only take another person on the other side, and I could place this fence wherever I wanted to very easily.
Rick Wallace here, bringing you Equibrew, a live probiotic that is geared to help your horse's gut health. I'm a true believer in this Equibrew, and it really makes a difference in all of my horses. Equibrew is safe, non-toxic, and clean sport compliant for FEI and racing events. Equibrew is an intact fermentation product with very high numbers of beneficial microbes. Order at equibrew.com or 850-879-2649. Welcome back to the Jon and Rick Show, brought to you by Horse Trailer Pros. We're joined with Bruce Haskell talking about the FEI meeting in Paris and about rider falls, I think 5-star qualifications. Bruce, take it.
Yeah, look, just to sort of recap, there's a deep concern within the FEI, and it's pretty visible that horse falls are what we need to be aware of. And the concept of social license, which it kind of was a buzzword and now it's a real concept, is hard to sell to riders, is we have a social responsibility to make sure that our sport not only visibly looks good, but starts with the welfare of the horse and works backwards. And while it used to be the pins and the frangible devices used to be about preventing, sadly, our deaths and our injuries, it now has an awful lot to do with preventing the visible picture of horses falling.
Hold on one sec there, though, Bruce. I'm just going to challenge that briefly. Because I would say, I don't disagree with you about the social license thing. I think we have to be very careful there. Two points. One, I think if we're going to keep pushing to stay in the Olympics, then we have to a little bit accept at least a margin of social license. And two, in my opinion, in all the conversations I have, really where the horse fall thing really comes down to is rider falls. For the most part, riders walk away from. Horse falls, riders very often do not walk away from. And so when a horse comes down on a rider, so that's really when I've had conversations within my various safety committees and with other people, it's been, if the horse falls, typically the rider's in big trouble. So that, I don't disagree, it's about the picture, but just to be fair, I think that's where the horse fall thing comes in. So anyway, go ahead.
No, look, I totally agree. We're in my era, sadly, we've been through this where we've got to remember that the devices are there to prevent a rotational fall, to prevent a fall getting worse in its process. And sadly, social license is making it very, very difficult for us to exist in the social sphere without taking responsibility for our horses. So that led me on to one of the big talking points within Paris was whether or not there would be compulsory compulsory carding for those riders that have had a fall, had a horse fall, had repetitive falls, how that would work, whether it would be retrospectively applied. And there were a lot of deep concerns around taking what is essentially, as a rider, if we've had a horse fall, we are essentially punished anyway. There was a sort of a two-channel communication going on, in my view, between this is what we want to do. We want to highlight those riders. And it's a really hard conversation to have because, yes, I agree. If you're cantering down a fence and you're on a tired horse, you really genuinely should pull up. You should be that rider that knows how to take control. I have no support for anyone who's pushing a horse beyond their physical limits. That's just bad horsemanship. But if things genuinely go wrong through no fault of yours or no fault of the horse, or just a freak of nature or touch of wind or whatever, then retrospectively sanctioning and coming down hard on the riders. Oh, come on, you don't think we're horsemen? Our horse is already on the ground. Things have gone right. It's just, they're trying to turn a rule into a publicly acceptable version without any degree of objectivity, and I have a problem with that.
So can I ask you a question?
I think federations have a problem with this too.
Just a question here, and you can not answer if you're not comfortable with it. Do you know how many horse falls you've had in your career?
None.
Right. I can count them on, well, I think I've had 3 in my entire career. So
none.
Just to play devil's advocate, and of those 3 that I had, I retired 2 of them immediately afterward because I decided not, either one wasn't a good enough horse, one was an older horse that needed to be retired and lost his confidence, and neither of them were terrible falls, but they went down. And the third one was a horse that I'd actually just bought and was probably riding it at a competition too early, so I took a step back.
Sure.
All 3 of those were my fault at the end of the day. But that's I mean, sadly, like you were saying, I'm older, I'm 46. So that's a pretty long time frame from when I started eventing at 14 to there to have 3. So just being devil's advocate here, and I know you're advocating for the riders and I get it. And I'm not saying we got to come down hard on these guys, but sort of the numbers that I remember being tossed around were like, if you had 2 or 3 horse falls in a 12 or 18 month period, then you might get carded. I mean, is that really unreasonable?
Yeah. Okay. So you're putting me back that you're doing the David O'Connor.
It's a show.
Do I think it's unreasonable? I absolutely do, because one, as I said on the rule, there's a rule, I think I quoted it at the meeting. If you're a categorized rider and you have a repetitive number of falls within a certain period, you are going to be degraded anyway. You're going to be eliminated on site. Your competition is over. You're also going to be dealing with the fact that you have to deal with a horse that's lost its confidence. There are enough penalties being thrown in your corner. Chucking this in there, they use the references to football and soccer and basketball. Well, those are really clear, arbitrary decisions where you know whether you are in front of the player as the ball is kicked. You know whether you're blocking a tackle in a basketball attempt. You're letting a subjective. It's just that I don't agree with how this is applied, because there are a lot of reasons why that fall could have happened.
Yep. And John,
yeah, it's a hard one.
I got a question, John. So I hear where you're coming from. So when we're talking about that, I think to Bruce's point, I mean, there's course design, there's different ways of things that are happening that create problems on a course. Are we subjecting ourselves to that course design? Is there footing, you jump the jump, you get through the jump, the horse trips and falls and hits the ground. I mean, is that considered a fall? Where are we drawing the line of what a fall really is and what it's not, and what causes that fall? Are we getting into that?
Oh, it got worse than that, John, that they opened the door, didn't they, John, in that meeting? To answer Rick's question, they already admitted that 80%, they thought that 80% of horse falls were rider errors. Well, guess what? That leaves 20% someone else's problem. Course designer, technical delegate, ground, wind, TV screen.
Yeah, I guess, and again, I think it's a very interesting conversation. And I think I know where you lean. I think you know probably where I lean. I just keep coming back to my initial question, which is anybody who's debating this, just look at your career and think, how many horse falls have you had? And, as I say this, I'll probably go out this weekend and fall down on one, and everybody will see me on social media and be like, you idiot. But I think just before we sort of knee jerk react to, that's terrible, we can't be sitting riders down for this sort of thing. I think if there is, to me anyway, I don't know where it is, but there is a line of, right, John, you've put too many horses on the floor.
There's also rules that allow us to allow a TD, and this is what I got the distinct impression is they're not empowering their technical delegates, their officials, their ground jury to make better decisions about what is the bad riding that got to the point before the fall happened. They're trying to introduce a rule that stops those guys from intervening. You're talking about a bunch of dressage judges that haven't ridden in 20 years and probably never seen a solid fence and really ought not to be in a judging position. But they're the ones that should stop. I can't quote the rider, but I had a rider from when the World Games were harassed saying, all I did was canter around slowly and I was waiting for them to pull me up. I wanted them to pull me up. I was under team instructions. I needed to finish. And all I wanted to do was for the ground jury to pull me up. So you got to understand the bigger context that these guys are under pressure for their teams, their owners, themselves. And I'm not a fan of riders taking horses beyond their limits, but we need to empower our officials and make them more aware of the existing rule framework they can work on before we throw in something extra. If it's bad riding and you rode that horse and you made a decision that caused it to crash, you absolutely need to be penalized. But innocent falls, innocent concepts, I think it's a rule that needs to be deeply, carefully considered. Because again, you put it in the Olympic context, which we're trying to stay in, is you're going to get protests. Like Sam Griffiths at, showing my age, is London. He fell on the flat, round the corner, no fault, no speed, nothing. The horse just slipped on hard ground. Hard ground caused by the organizer who hadn't aggravated. Was that Sam's fault? No, he was just trying to canter his horse around a corner.
Right.
But according to the FEI, he should have ridden that slower. He should have done this. He should have done that. Seriously? That's background management. Heartbreak. Guy pulls out in the car in front of you. That guy's eliminated. So
I hear you, but in both of those cases, that would be one unfortunate horse fall. And then if they go out and they have another one or two in 12 or 18 months, then it starts to matter. Now, I guess your argument would be, well, now you're riding with that on your conscience as you're going around and worried about it. Does that change how you ride? But I don't know. I think it's certainly an interesting conversation to be had.
It's a one where I'm a little bit concerned that the volume riders are going to get affected by this.
Yeah.
Whereas what they need to be targeting is lower volume. If you're crashing a horse at 2-star because you're riding badly, where was the ground jury before you did it?
100%. One thing I did want to talk about, Bruce, before we run out of time here, was this Horse and Hound article that came out and sort of the role of the press. We appreciate it here at the Jon and Rick show because really there hasn't been a lot of coverage of all of this. And so everybody's going to come to us so that they can hear from you. But how do you think we deal with the sort of that side of everything?
I was in a working group with you and we were talking about media, and I would be much more comfortable if the media was involved. They were there through the entire process. And this was a very when there was a media woman from the FEI was very anti this. I would much rather that we had representatives of that organization, any press agent there. They have to be silent, of course, but if they'd seen the healthy debate and seen the reactions and been around the lunchtime conversations and had over the coffees, they saw people. There wasn't a person in that room was anti-eventing. There wasn't a person who horse was anti-horse. Everyone was like thinking about ways to make it work. And the problem is now you end up with sensationalist media trying to take phrases out of context and use them to sell magazines.
Yeah, and they actually did that to you and to me.
Yeah, completely. It's like that wasn't the full conversation. Well done. So have a look for yourselves. If you've got 2 days to spare, every single one of those conversations is incredibly well documented. But we get picked to pieces pretty quickly. I'm sorry about the croaky voice. I've been teaching. It's just, if you don't embrace the media and embrace those groups that are our friends, then all we're going to do is get talked about in isolation.
Yeah, well, and I think one thing that I'm going to do is right now at the bottom of the screen, there's going to be a little website listed there, because I did, and I know this isn't exactly what we're talking about, but I did just get an email that that whole seminar is up.
I think Natalie just sent the link out for everybody.
Yeah, so I'm going to include that for Joel to put up there, and you guys can go write that down. It's eventing/risk management/seminars. Oh, maybe that isn't it. I'll make sure I get it, because that doesn't look like anyway, it's on there. I'll make sure we get it on there. It's on the FEI website. I'll get it on there. So that if anybody does want to see it, they can go through and they can get it. And I'll link it onto our Facebook page as well.
Yeah, look, I thought it was a healthy debate. I thought the whole thing was positive. It's a little bit, as you said, it's a bit annoying. We didn't have athletes there. All the A category riders were invented, but then in reality, who was going to spend their own money to turn up at a conference in the middle of nowhere in the middle of January when you guys are getting ready in America for your season? We're getting ready for ours. To take 2 days out and spend wasn't cheap to be there. You're not going to get a representative view. But
no, I mean, you're not wrong. I guess the only thing I would say is and this is why you were there, right? And yes, I will, full disclosure, say USEF did fund my trip to be there.
Yep.
But the reality is, right or wrong, if the riders want to have a voice, they do have to participate, whether like you're saying that's through their federations or showing up to the meetings. Look, okay, there weren't a lot of riders there because it's expensive to get to France. There was not one French rider there.
No, absolutely none. And Belgium just across the border, and
so we have it. Like, I have to say, I think the FEI group is a group of very good people who are trying their best. But you do need active athletes to be a part of the conversations. Go ahead, Rick.
I got to say, I didn't even know we could be there.
Well, A categorized athletes.
I didn't even know they could be there.
Yeah.
So, where did that go out? Where did I hear that from you, that A athletes could go? I didn't hear that.
Right. No, that's a good point.
I mean, we've got to know we can be there. I'm not an A athlete, but I know plenty of them.
Right.
In order to get to those meetings. So that's probably one of our first steps for riders, is to make sure that we know when they are, who can go. Right.
Well, that was an excellent job, Rick, because
good.
Coming up next, we have the chairman of the Risk Management Steering Group, Geoff Sinclair, on, and we're going to ask him that. We're going to find out, how do we make sure these guys know how to participate? So let's make sure we do that. Bruce, I know it's late there. I appreciate you coming on and being flexible with all this timing.
It's not a problem. We haven't even talked about knocking down flags yet, mate.
I know that's a whole nother.
Yeah, well, we'll have you back on, and let's talk
in the
about
long route black X ways too. Whatever that is.
Look, if I come away from that conference, it is. There's a lot of people in there who really want to move our sport forward. There's a lot of people who recognize that our sport is outdated in terms of its rules, its social appeal, its ability for quick scoring. I use my famous little snowboard analogy. We're dealing with a world that a kid of 16 years old with hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram can start at the bottom of at the top of a half pipe, and 10 seconds later be at the bottom doing all kinds of stuff we don't even know about. And they have 5 judges at the bottom who can give them an instant score that they can't challenge and they walk away from. How outdated is our sport?
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. Good point.
Bruce, thank you. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with Geoff Sinclair, and I do hope that we can get you back on again so we can discuss more of this going forward.
Great. Thank you for the invite. And next time I'll do my hair, have a shave, and wear a baseball cap so I can join in with you boys.
You're good.
Me too.
Nice.
That's what he always looks like, Bruce. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
When I'm in the middle of my competition season, it's easy to get behind in my hydration or just feel exhausted. When that happens, I turn to Jumpstart IV Therapy. Jumpstart IV Therapy is a mobile therapy serving the state of Florida. Their team of healthcare professionals are there to help the equestrian athlete feel their best so they can perform their best. Their IV treatment of fluids, vitamins, minerals, and medicines will give you an exclusive advantage on and off your horse. Give them a call at 407-449-0532 or find them on the web at jumpstartivtherapy.com. Jump for Joy fences are easy to move, lightweight, durable, and low maintenance. So we're out here on the cross country. We just finished over in the show jumping over the Jump for Joy fences. Had a great time schooling over them. They're really nice and easy to move, so we were able to adjust some things and really have the exact school that we needed thanks to the Jump for Joy fences. I love them.
Order yours at jumpforjoyusa.com.
Hey, it's John here. I just want to let you guys know I got back from schooling at Magnolia Sands Farm here in Ocala, Florida. Their cross-country field is perfectly suited for a first outing on a young horse or schooling your upper-level horse. Magnolia Sands offers over 110 jumps ranging from starter to intermediate, plus multiple banks, ditches, and waters. They're constantly updating their courses and have even added new ditches and a starter ditch wall. Conveniently located in Northeast Ocala, Magnolia Sands has made it easy for riders and trainers with online waivers, Venmo, and PayPal, and even offer a golf cart for guests. MagnoliaSandsFarm.com. Dusty Rose Farm, a beautiful newly renovated 25-acre farm, is offering long-term or seasonal rent, dry stalls, and layover. Located in Anthony, Florida, it's just 30 minutes to both Weck and Hits, 15 minutes to Majestic Oaks, 35 minutes to the Florida Horse Park. 38 stalls available for rent in 2 barns that have all the amenities. Large stalls with new mats and automatic waters. Plenty of turnout, a half-mile irrigated track, 300 by 300 natural sand arena with a full jump course and dressage court. Loads of parking with 2 full RV hookups. Call or text for rates to book your stay in sunny and warm Ocala, Florida. 636-751-1200.
Welcome back to the Jon and Rick Show, brought to you by Horse Trailer Pros. And we're really fortunate now that we are joined by Mr. Geoff Sinclair, who is the chairman of the FEI's Risk Management Steering Group. Did I get that right?
It's a long title, isn't it, John?
It is. It is. You would think I'd have it sorted out and know it by now since I'm on it, but I can never remember if it's a group or a committee, and I really don't know what the difference is anyway.
I'm sure it's, I don't understand either, other than it's a good professional group of people.
Right. Yes, it is. It's fun to be on, other than it's usually at 6 a.m. East Coast time here in the US for the meetings. But I was talking to you, and it's even worse for you, isn't it?
Normally it's 10 p.m. to midnight for me, but it's 10 a.m. in the morning here now. So it's pretty good because we don't have to have the Europeans on the line.
Perfect. So Geoff, before we get into all of the FEI stuff and the business side of this interview, I thought it'd be kind of fun just to get to know you. So you were saying that you were just out riding. So how do horses sort of come into your life on a regular basis? What do you do?
My life started at 15 when I got interested in girls, and there's Pony Club with lots of girls. There are 108 members in our local club and 106 were girls. So I joined that and checked them all out and married the best one. And I'm still married to her 40 odd years later. And then hunted and evented and really enjoyed horse life. Got involved because of that in the saddlery business, and started a business that you in America might know, Weather Beater. Began in Australia, and then I worked with Wintech establishing that. So a lot of travelling in the saddlery business. I'm still in the saddlery business today. And then I think I got more involved in eventing. I think I'm a better organiser than rider. So got involved and been involved as a technical official in 5 Olympics, and been on the FEI eventing committee, chaired this risk management committee after we had a couple of rider deaths in young girls in 2016 died in Australia, and really became passionate about what we could do to try to avoid rider and horse deaths or fatalities or serious injuries. And now for the last 10 or 12 years, I've played really poor polo, which is a great way to get sucked into something. You think you're going to get 1 horse and 2 horses, and then suddenly you've got 4 or 5 and a groom and a truck. And I think all of us know what horse addiction's like, and polo is just the same.
So watch out for polo. That's what I got out of that.
So
exactly.
You mentioned Wintech. So are you still involved with Wintech?
No, not on the guy who invented it's an Aussie guy, Ron Bates. But still in our business
the
today.
Only reason I say it was a saddle I sat 150 miles in. We went on offbeat safaris with Lucinda Green and the Masamara, and I sat in a Wintech for 150 miles. It was the best comfortable saddle for 150 miles that I've ever sat on. So that was good.
Yeah, they were pretty amazing. I mean, we don't use a wooden tennis racket anymore. Right. We don't ski in leather ski boots, and the idea of good synthetics it's worked a treat.
It would work great on safari. So that was cool.
To be fair, though, Rick, how many 150-mile rides have you ridden in other saddles?
None.
Yeah, I will say though, they are pretty comfortable saddles. Every time I sit in one at a clinic, I'm always like, this is a super comfy saddle. You kind of stick to it really nicely. They're good.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah. Okay, Geoff. So the one other thing I'll say is I do also understand sort of your motivation for getting in. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but I got in with my local 4-H club. We didn't have a pony club and stuck with horses for similar reasons. I didn't marry one of the 4-H girls. I waited till I made it to Canada to meet one. But yeah, it wasn't a downside that I was one of 2 boys in the entire 4-H club.
Yeah, no, it's a good system when you're young, isn't it?
Yeah, it worked out well.
Oh, Jon and Geoff.
So anyway, hey, the other question I have, which I know I've asked you before, but so if this is Australia, where do you live?
Near
if
your
you point your
wedding
thumb point your thumb to the bottom,
right here.
And yeah, down in the bottom is Melbourne. So yeah,
right.
all Aussies pretty well live on the coastline.
Oh wow!
A lot of the centre is desert. So Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth are all on the coast, but there's sort of 3,000 kilometres from Melbourne, or what's that? 2,000 miles from Melbourne to Perth, and probably 1,500 miles from Melbourne to Brisbane, and then to the top of Australia there's another 1,500. So it's pretty much the size of your country, but only 25 million people.
Right, because you got to be all on the coast.
We're all on the coast. I'm sure we'll get a lot more people. They're coming. Everybody seems to want to live here like they wanted to live in America too. Right.
No, it's a pretty desirable place from everything I've been told. And obviously, because you're all on the coast, everybody surfs. Is that right?
No, I think like in where I live is Melbourne, which is like the sports capital of Australia. We're crazy about F1, the Australian Tennis Open, the Australian Golf Championships, all the big sporting events, racing, the biggest long horse race in Australia, biggest prize money's in Melbourne. So yeah, anything that's to do with sport, we love.
We got to love Far Lap.
Yeah, that's right. That was a big story, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and the Melbourne Cup is still a fantastic horse race.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, now we're going to dig into some stuff at the FEI, huh? Is that what we're doing?
Yes. Go, Rick.
Well, I think, Geoff, if you can just take us through the meeting at Paris and what your takeaways were from that. Do you feel that some significant ground was covered? And is there any concerns for you on any of the things that might be presented today?
So I think firstly, it's fantastic to get 110 or 120 heads in the room and be open to debate and discussion. And I think with a lot of these things, it's quite good to throw a few bombs out there. So throw a few ideas that might be for the future. And I think there's always concern amongst our sport, probably for 2 things. One is the safety and how do we reduce horse falls, reduce injuries and serious injuries. And the other, I think, is for all of us is what's the future of the sport? Where is it actually going? And I think so that discussion about the social license was really important, and whether we stay in the Olympics or don't stay in the Olympics. So what would I say significantly was discussed there? I think on the safety side, the frangible technology just continues to grow, and we're even getting to the point where there were several people there talking about building fully frangible courses. So, that's another thing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, well, some will think it's fantastic, some will not. But I think a second thing I learned and hadn't really thought about enough was, and Jon, I don't know how you feel about this, but we know that eventing dressage, great. You can probably see better dressage, but we know the difference between getting a 22 and a 35 can mean a lot in the end result. Every mark counts in the dressage. We often see, in fact, a lot of people, and our sport is about cross country, get the same mark. across country. They get clear cross country, no jumping, no time. So there's no differential in the cross country. And then we're seeing show jumping have a bit more of an influence. So that was interesting to think, how do we make cross country more influential so the score counts, without actually making it too tough or harder. We've got skinny, we've got more technical. It's a lot tougher sport, not more technical sport than it was 20 years ago. So I think other thought about frangibles was too, if somebody does get it wrong, the frangible breaks. Even we know they break with, what is it, John? It's a 330 times a show jumping pole coming down with the
Yeah, it was
front rail.
something like a show
14
jump pole is half a joule, and I think a frangible is what, like, Dave Voss has told me this so many times, he's going to just be annoyed when I get it wrong, but I think it's like 220 or 40 joules.
No, it's the front rail's 165, so it comes down 165 joule, which is 330 times more pressure than a show jump rail.
Right.
And the back rail comes down at 700 joule, which is 1400 times more than a show jump rail comes down. So
this is why you're the chairman and I'm just a member, right there.
No, I just had to repeat it, but Dave explains it normally, doesn't he? So, but I think the key to that, isn't it, that in fact we know they only break with a decent touch, not a light touch. And if a horse does jump a fence nicely, why shouldn't it be more rewarded than one that actually does come down heavily on the back rail or touch it at 1,400 times a show jump rail? We know if your show jump rail comes down, it's 4 penalties. So I think that's one way that we can influence the scores.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that,
Geoff, hold on before you keep going on this, because this is really great stuff and I want to make sure we keep going. Let's take a break and we're going to just check in with some of our sponsors so we can pay some bills, and then we'll be right back and we're just going to pick it up right there.
Go for it.
For a horse owner on the road, your trailer is essential. No one enjoys being stuck on the road. At Horse Trailer Pros, we repair, renovate, and maintain all makes and models of horse trailers. We work directly with your insurance company or manufacturer for warranty repairs and insurance claims. Our state-of-the-art facility provides quick turnaround and friendly customer service. Considering a living quarter conversion? We do those too. Find comfort on the road with Horse Trailer Pros. Call or text 352-804-2131. HorseTrailerPros.com.
Grant Showalter has over 15 years of equine bodywork and saddle fitting experience. His technique allows him to identify and alleviate tightness in muscles. He uses trigger point massage to release points of restriction. Grant has over a decade of experience fitting and adjusting a wide variety of saddles. His expertise in equine physiology, coupled with a thorough understanding of the importance of a properly fitted saddle, allows him to quickly identify and correct any balance issues. Grant can also adjust your saddle on site. Grant works on all of my competition horses, and I have noticed a significant improvement in their performance at competitions and their overall way of going. Grant's based in Ocala, Florida year-round, but regularly travels to the surrounding areas. For more information or to schedule an appointment, call 484-639-4454. I'm John Holling. We run Holling Eventing out of Willow Run Farm in Ocala, Florida. We run a full-service training facility here at Holling Eventing. We have amateur clients, we have sale horses, we teach lessons, and obviously our own competition horses as well. When Kurt first arrived at the farm, he was a little bit nervous and excited. Stress Less really helped so we could get him in a training routine. Stress Less is really easy to use. It's a part of our program. He gets it as a daily supplement and it helps us keep him focused and ready to go to work. This year we're moving Kurt up to the preliminary level. He's been doing great and I'm very excited about the season to come. I'm John Holling and I'd recommend Stress Less to anyone who wants to help their horses stay calm and focused.
Rick Wallace here, bringing you Equibrew, a live probiotic that is geared to help your horse's gut health. I'm a true believer in this Equibrew, and it really makes a difference in all of my horses. Equibrew is safe, non-toxic, and clean sport compliant for FEI and racing events. Equibrew is an intact fermentation product with very high numbers of beneficial microbes. Order at equibrew.com or 850-879-2649.
Welcome back to the Jon and Rick Show, brought to you by Horse Trailer Pros. We're with Geoff Sinclair talking about the FEI meeting in Paris. Specifically right now, we're talking about frangible pins and the jewels that it takes to knock these rails down. Where were you going with that, Geoff? As far as jumping, being awarded for jumping something really well as opposed to not.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. If somebody comes in deep and knocks it and with the back of the front legs, then maybe that should be a difference in the score, and a frangible will actually give you 11 points difference. So there's some countries that talk about having no penalties for frangible devices, but I personally think if you jump the fence beautifully, it should be rewarded.
Well, and to that point, Geoff, isn't it sort of the whole point there is, you're not talking about, and you did say this, but just to sort of clarify it for people who maybe just are tuning in at this segment, we're not talking about just you bump the rail, oh, you should get a penalty because it's cross country. If you hit those rails and a frangible device is activated, it's a significant strike. Like, you're talking about at best a horse with a very sore leg, and at worst a rotational fall. So it should affect the score at a minimum.
Yeah. And I think, look, the other thing is we've done a lot of work, as you know, John, getting a new standard in the last couple of years, and got the yellow clip out, which is always, all advancements take a little time to settle in. But now that we can do it on tables or filled in oxes, those sort of things, we have the ability to do it on a much wider range of fences. And I thought the other thing was interesting that we're talking about the weight of rails being the most important, rather than the type of timber or the length or the width or anything else. So we really should be able to use a lot of different types of timber and natural timber again too. So I think that we can buy a set of scales you hang on the front of a tractor for $100 and weigh a rail, and then we'll be able to make sure they're right.
Yeah, it was cool looking, Rick. I don't know if you've gotten to see it, the way that they're having, these guys are hollowing out these rails. Like, we've kind of done it for a little while where they get the underside of a rail and they just empty it out. But now MIM, one of the downsides of using the MIM system in the past has been the timber has to be quite narrow in diameter. And so now Matt's over at MIM has come up with this whole idea, which in a way is quite simple in concept, but revolutionary that he thought of it and came up with it, where you basically take the slabs, the 4 slabs off the outside of a rail, take the middle out, reassemble them, probably fill it in with some foam maybe if you need to, and put some supports in the inside, screw it all together, and now you have this, you can have a massive rail or a more massive rail that doesn't weigh too much, so it can still be used with the MIM system. It's really cool. It's expensive, or more expensive, because of the time and labor involved in needing the right equipment to get it done, but it's just another pretty ingenious way of.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty cool. I mean, back in the day, I would think you had a couple of them, the styrofoam logs that really didn't work, right? I think I broke your last one that you had on the farm a little while ago. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I haven't heard about that system, but that does sound like something that could really benefit us.
That's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. So Geoff, then we went into. I want to cover at least 2 more things here, and the one we didn't get into with Bruce at the end was the flags. So where do you think we're heading with flags and penalties?
So we talked about cross country being influential. I don't think this is so much a safety thing. I think it's more about cross country scoring and being influential. But I did a 3-day event on the weekend, and there was nearly maybe a 70-degree corner, and I saw 3 horses go clearly through the corner with their head, neck and shoulder in, knock the flag with their boot, or with the horse's leg, and it was a clear. There's always but the flag came down. Always a conjecture. 4 years ago, the Swedes introduced a rule where if you all the flags are fitted with that plastic attachment that they break away with the same amount of pressure. And if you knock a flag in Sweden down, you get 7 penalties automatically, no questions asked. I think when we talked about that name tree, mainly it would have been laughed about. This year when we talked about it, and the Swedes showed what had happened in the last 4 years' history, and I saw this again on the weekend, the horse that jumped really nicely between the flags, and maybe we have to make them a little bit wider, got the same score as the one with the head, neck and shoulder and then knocked the flag over. So if we could introduce something like the Swedes have, which is flags that get knocked down, it's very clear to the public, it's very clear to the scoring, it's actually clear to the rider what happened. The minute you knock a flag down, at 7 penalties. So I'm sure that's a discussion that's going to continue. And in fact, it got quite a round of applause from 100 people, didn't it, John?
Yeah.
Well, I got a question about that. So I hear that in concept it's not bad. Does that take away the 15-point rule for neck, shoulder of the horse going through, or are we adding that too? So is that going to just take away that a horse really did jump the jump or not?
I think writing the rules, having sat there doing it, is impossible. I'm trying to write that on this program now. I'm sure you'll think of all sorts of objections, but I think basically it would mean it would take away the 15. It would mean if you knock the flag down, you get 7 penalties, or whatever we decide on, and if you leave the flag standing.
So I guess
I
guess my debate on that is, okay, so then sure, we're going to award a horse that jumps it nicely, but how about a horse that didn't jump it at all, but it just knocked down the flag and we said it got through? So we're kind of back to, well, they only get 7 points, but he really didn't jump the jump.
There'll have to be, there's that point when does it become the point that he didn't jump the fence? So there'll have to be something there where you have to go around and represent.
Yeah, but that's no different, right? Than I understand what you're saying, Rick. Not to answer for you, Geoff, but I am. It's no different really than where we're at now with the 15, right? Like you can get 15 for attempting it, but there's still the possibility you could knock the flag down with your horse's head, never have really made an attempt, and they're going to give you a run out for it as well. So that there will always, no matter what we decide to do, there will always be a line of,
well, I hear it and I understand that, and I understand where that 7 points in Sweden gets to, but obviously, John, we've seen a lot of horses jump a jump that didn't jump a jump, just had a flag, and if they get 7 when they really never jumped that jump and there's no other retribution to that, then I think that's a problem.
Yeah, there will be another retribution, and maybe it's not 15, maybe it's you get eliminated if you don't jump it properly again.
Very good.
It's probably flag down, go through centrally clear, beautiful. It rewards the really good riding and the good training for the skinnies. Knock the flag down with your boot or your hoof or whatever happens, 7. And then if anything other than that, probably is going to end up, you have to come around and jump it again.
So Geoff, I got another question. And to you, John. So we're talking about this, and that we all ultimately have, over the years, obviously, since I was running Advanced and then Advanced again in the 2014-15, but back in the 80s and 90s, we didn't really have skinnies, right? They started getting introduced further along the way. When are we going to start talking about the building and course designing so that there's a way to jump it without hitting the flag in the way the course was designed to be jumped? So
I think we've already talked about that, because if you go back a few years ago, some of the skinnies were starting to get too skinny, and the top course designers got together, and I don't know whether you've ever read them, but the cross-country design guidelines are really designed to show all the course builders what to do. And right now there's minimum suggested widths, 140, I think it is for 4-star, 150, 160, 170, 180 for each grade. And they're wider than they were 2 or 3 years ago, because it really became unreasonable. So I think already we've got there. And if we introduce this flag rule, then I suspect there might be a revision of those as well.
Very good. I mean, I think again, in my mind, when I think of FEI and rule implementation, and anytime we look at something, we have a whole set of dominoes set up, right? And we're trying to get the first domino to the last domino. And sometimes when we push that first domino, it gets way off track and never gets to the end domino. So I just, when we start talking about all this, and I know you two have dedicated a lot of time to what you do, and I appreciate it. I think if we can overall look at, I think in a concept, it's a great idea, but I think Geoff and Jon really thinking through the process of how that works is going to be, it's the devil in the details, right?
And it's great. It's been tested in Sweden for 4 years, so there'll be a lot of learnings there. So,
and I would love, I guess that's what I would love to see is what their reporting is on that. So hopefully I can find something on that.
Yeah.
So then, Geoff, just briefly.
That kind of, sorry, Jon, that kind of leads into the next question for Geoff.
Which is what?
We kind of talked about it with Bruce, right? So Geoff, you know, you had the meeting in Paris where A categorized riders are allowed to attend the FEI meeting, correct?
Yep.
And Jon and Bruce both were like, you know, not that many people showed up. And I was like, I didn't even realize that A categorized riders could show up at a FEI meeting. So my question is there a way that we can start promoting for A categorized riders to attend these meetings?
So I think, firstly, our sport's about the horses and riders, so it's not about the officials. So the more we can have there, the better. You know, we did that interview with William Fox Pitt, and we had some 5-star riders there, and Olympic riders there, which was fantastic. And I think Jon, I think you and I'd say one of the most frustrating safety things that we've had to work with, and you and I talked about it on the way to the airport, is how do we change the riders' minds about safety? And the fact that, you know, all the riders that fell at the horse balls at badminton this year were Category A riders is a significant thing. So what are we doing mentally? There was general agreement amongst the riders in the room that and everybody that 80% of horse balls are caused by rider error, not by the fault of the fence or something else. So, you know, the biggest influence is still who's driving that race car or who's riding that horse. And what are we doing to change the psychology there? We can put airbags in cars and crumple zones and everything else. We can put body protectors on and frangible fences, but how do we alter the psyche of the rider that they don't go like crazy at the end of a course or something like that?
And Geoff, I hear you on that. And I think we had that discussion earlier. What's happening with the other 20% that's not the rider's fault?
Well, I think that's, you know, for instance, there was a bad finishing fence at Buccalo at the Nations Cup, and we had a lot of horse falls there, and a lot of really solid discussion with the officials there about, you know, it was on a straight line, it was fairly square, it needed you to sit up and slow down, and wasn't the right fence in the right place for a last fence in a Nations Cup with a very varied quality of field. So yeah, absolutely. Sometimes course designers and officials get it wrong, and they got to learn that we can't do that. So yeah.
And I hear that too. So what are the repercussions for bad design?
Well, I think firstly, they had to have a meeting with the risk management steering group and the FEI office, and that was a repercussion.
Right.
So I think that's one thing, and then it sort of gets quite publicly discussed what happens. So, right. I think the other thing I learned out of it, William Fox Pitt said to me, he knew that fence as a rider. So 5-star rider at that level knew that you'd have to sit up and slow down to finish the final fence. He also knew as a competitor, and you guys are all competitive, that there'd be some riders from some nations that mightn't understand that. So one of the problems we still have is if there's something that's not right, do the officials, but do the riders or the people of their chefs that talk about it, or do they just think, no, we're good, we're going to tackle that, and what's in front of it, we don't say that it's wrong, and then they get away with it. And certainly at Burleigh, where we had, I think 1 in 8 horses left the start box fell, which is, you know, I think if you'd said that at the start of the day, everybody would have been horrified. Certainly, all the officials, all the riders, everybody walked the course, and nobody was saying, we shouldn't have this trout hatchery fence or this big frangible oxer that has a downhill slope behind it that horses were putting down early with. So I think, there's a responsibility on all the riders too to say some more as well.
And I don't mean to take over, John. I totally agree with that. And I think John, you can attest to this. There's many times to your point, Geoff, when you're in a meeting, you're talking about a cross-country course. It's a 4-star course that I'm referring to in North Carolina. And there was conversation about a ditch and wall that was, all the riders were saying, this is not, needs to be in there. Nobody, and the officials, the designers, nobody would take it out. Well, 5-6 rides in, it was happening like the riders thought it was going to happen. They finally took it out. So while we can have those conversations at the moment, at the event, not too often are we heard. So, I think on the sides of officials and designers, when we do we're not just being babies about things. I think, to your point, we're talking about something that might cause a problem. I think we need to all be listening to each other.
I think what you're saying there now, and I don't know the full story, so
Right.
Let's not be individual about that.
No,
but
exactly.
we know there was the badminton case many years ago that really brought that thing in, that at the end, if the majority of the riders think it shouldn't be there, they will have the final say. So if you look at the rules closely, there's an ultimate that the riders can have that say. Even last weekend, even if you look last weekend, I had this event. I hate it when people come at 6 o'clock on Friday night and tell me that there's something they want removed, and we're starting at 8 in the morning. But it's the first time it's happened to me for many years. We put up quite a tough course qualifying for Adelaide 5-star on the weekend, and there were riders came to us at 6:30 after the rider meeting saying, "Oh, look, this is too intense." It was intense, anyway, we did something for it and actually removed one fence and take some reaction. I see no problem with that. What we removed, in fact, made no difference to the test. The test was great. Those that qualified did a good job. Everybody was happy. I don't think there's this war between riders. It shouldn't happen, the war between the riders and the officials. Yeah.
John, what do you think?
Well, I think that's great. And I think just the last little thing that I would say, which I think I can say, is to your question, Rick, about what happens when designers get it wrong. And Geoff sort of alluded to this. They do end up having to answer for it and have meetings with the FEI, and they do get scrutinized. And if their statistics, I don't know.
They get a card. I mean,
I don't know if it's public or how public it is, but I can tell you it happens. That they have to have meetings with, and I don't know that whether it's public or not. I know in other sports, referees get discussed with decisions that they make that they don't think are the correct call, and they have to answer to the head bosses about it. And that does happen in eventing as well. Isn't that right, Geoff?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is any event in the world where there's more than 2 horseballs at one fence, or more than 10% of the field has horseballs across the class, they automatically get a letter of please explain. And it's not to the course designer, it's to the course designer, it's to the TD, it's to the president of the ground jury, all officials. And they respond and give us stuff that we read at the risk management group, and we're trying to help either learn from them or for them to learn and think about it. And then if it's more public and serious, we're now meeting with them, in a Zoom type meeting the following week, because social media's got it out there the very next day. We had that the Poe situation where the yellow clip went quite a few times on the corner, the MIM corner in the water. So I think it was quite public about why that happened. And, we actually met with the people, talked about it, and then really worked out with the course designer that the way he designed that fence, the people that came to it straight on and jumped badly into the water, came straight on. Of course, it's going to break more easily because it was meant to be jumped at an angle. So, we're really working hard on that. And I think your ultimate question, Rick, is do officials ever get reprimanded like riders can? And the answer is ultimately yes. And there was a case from Blenheim a few years ago where those officials were stood down for a particular period of time. So, yep, it does happen.
And I appreciate that. And, I appreciate both you and John's work on what you do. I know it's not easy, making it safe for us out there and all the things that need to happen with so many dynamic parts. It's a tough job. So thanks for taking the time and doing all the stuff that you do, both you and John. We appreciate it. We might question it, but we do appreciate it.
Yeah, well, the more riders we can get involved, we invite the category A riders. I think they get emailed, and whether they read often riders don't read a lot.
That's the problem, right?
Right. Well, listen,
so
Geoff,
we need to be on Facebook or something, whatever we need to do to get them there. We should try.
The Jon and Rick show. So listen, Geoff, sincerely, thank you for coming on. I know we've kept you longer than we said we would. You probably have some horses to get back to and some, I don't know what you call practicing polo, but you got to go out and swing a mallet and get ready to rock. So go do your thing.
Learn to breathe again.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And
good on you, John. Good on you, Rick. Have a good day.
All right. And thank you everybody for watching the show. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you are all caught up on all things FEI to start the season out. And we will be back in 2 weeks, Rick, with another awesome show.
All right. Thanks.
We have an awesome show for you guys today.
The greatest eventer of all time.
Good news for the sport.